Hari Om and welcome to episode 2 of the Gurudev podcast, His Vision, Our Mission. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, you can go back and listen to episode 1, where we interviewed one of Swami Chinmayanandaji's earliest disciples in the West, Rudit Amir. Puja Gurudev's early trips to the United States were met with a growing number of dedicated students. In episode 2, we hear from several of these students as they share how their guru empowered them to spread the message of Vedanta. We first spoke to a gentleman who has been married for over 57 years and is the father of 4 children. He was inspired by Gurudev after meeting him in 1971 and went on to lead several study groups in the Bay Area. At Gurudev's request, he eventually gave discourses on Vedanta and continues to do so today. Here's an extract of one of his satsangs, where he spoke on moksha and the qualities of a true mumukshu.
Mumukshu. Mumukshu viene de moksha. Moksha, ¿qué quiere decir? Liberación. ¿Okay? Ahora, mumukshu es aquella persona que busca con todo su corazón la liberación. Eso es el mumukshu. Cuando un mumukshu, cuando esa persona que tiene ese deseo ardiente por liberarse.
By the way, we forgot to mention, his name is Jorge Luis Huaragui, and his discourses are in Spanish. This is the Gurudev podcast.
The body, mind, and intellect. Arjuna Vaja, Arjuna said, laws of causation. Discover your identity with God. Keep the goal highest.
Originally from Mexico, Mr. Huaragui had a keen interest in Hinduism. But it wasn't until he met Gurudev that he truly understood and appreciated Vedanta.
I was very young when I met him, in comparison. I met him in 1971. I was involved in some spiritual pursuits of different kinds in the San Francisco Bay Area. In those days, there were a lot of swamis, yogis, and strange people, talking about mysticism and all that. So I was doing yoga, this hatha yoga, and that's what sparked my interest. I say, well, this seems to be doing something for me. Where does it come from? What is the secret behind these disciplines? And they come from India. So in December of 1971, I went to listen to a Lama in San Francisco. I didn't like the lecture too much. I couldn't understand. But then someone gave me a flyer that showed that the following week in the same venue, there will be a person called Swami Chinmayananda. And I recognized, because there he was talking about the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. I heard a little bit about it. I didn't know anything very much, but I said, I want to listen to this man. So I came a week later, and that one time became 11 days of talks. It's the first Gita Jnana Yajna that ever happened in my life. So I listened to the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and then something interesting took place. The talks were at 7 o'clock in the evening, and they lasted for about an hour and a half. When he talked the first talk of Bhagavad Gita, then I saw him still sitting there, even though we were all leaving, and a few of us returned to our seats. And then he started teaching one of the Upanishads, Kena Upanishad. And I was very impressed. Not only that, but the thing is, he made me see something that I hadn't seen for myself. A true guru helps you see yourself. So he used that board, BMI, PFT, OET, with the Om symbol on top. He insisted. He said, look, it is not in the board. It is you. The lower part of the board, BMI, PFT, OET, that's a changing. That is not you. Who you are is that which is the core of the whole thing. So then I came to see a new me through his words.
For many Chinmaya Mission centers today, finding a venue for an acharya to speak at is not a major issue. But in the early 1970s, before Chinmaya Mission West was even established, Mr. Warigui and others had to resort to holding garage sales and selling their own possessions to generate enough money to rent a venue and host Gurudev's satsangs.
After I met Swamiji and listened to him the first time, then we got together at Rudit Emir's home. And with other students, I had come to the talks. We started studying the Gita and then later on the Upanishads. And so we did that for a whole year. And then the following year, we organized Swamiji to come back. And we didn't have any money, so we did garage sales, you know what they are. People donated stuff. I donated a car, an old car I had, and we made a raffle and so on. We got enough money to get a place for him to stay and also to help with the expenses. So we got a hall, and he came and gave another yajna, and that happened every year for the next following years, up to the last year that he came.
After several years of attending Gurudev's lectures in the Bay Area, Mr. Warigui was given the ultimate task, teaching Vedanta.
I used to hold the study groups. We used to hold many study groups, and one day Swamiji asked me to start teaching, to give yajnas. That was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy because, see, here's the thing. Let me tell you the scenario. We had just had a camp, and we were at Malti Prasad's and Raj Prasad's home in Palo Alto. And we were sitting around Swamiji because he's going to leave the following day. He was going to go back home to India or someplace. So anyway, so we were all sitting around. I was sitting right next to him on the floor. And just chit-chatting, and all of a sudden he asks a question. When does it rain here? This is in summer. And then someone in the crowd said, in October, November, Swamiji. So it was an interesting question. Then he makes a pause. And then he says, well, in November, we're going to have a yajna here in the Bay Area. Gita Jnana Yajna. And then everybody was very happy because Swamiji was going to come back twice in the same year. But then, he says, then somebody in the crowd, I think it was Uma or Nalini, said, but Swamiji, you're supposed to be then in Mumbai. How can you be here and there at the same time? He said, I'm not going to do it. I said, who's going to do it? There was no other acharyas in those days.
Right.
And then he says, Louis Maharaj will do it.
Louis Maharaj.
Yeah. And I said, I looked up and I said, I was sitting right next to him on his left side, and I looked him up, I said, you're kidding, Swamiji. And he didn't say, okay, he has continued saying, you guys have organized it. There should be not very many people, no more than 100. You guys get a venue, do the advertising, and come to listen to Louis. See you next year. So he went into the room. I went and followed him. I said, what guy? Knocked on the door. I said, Swamiji. He said, what? I said, let me tell you, I didn't think Swamiji or Guru would make mistakes, and you're making a big mistake. And then he said, what's the matter? I said, how can you say that? He said, don't you want to? I said, wait a minute. I said, ask me if I want to be the president of the United States. Of course, who doesn't want to? But you're not qualified. He says, let me tell you. He said, leave that to me. He says, you do it. And I'll be right with you.
During his first lecture series, which lasted for 11 days, Louis Maharaj spoke on Chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, the same text that he had heard Gurudev speak on the first time he met him years earlier. Perhaps the most inspiring aspect of Mr. Warigui's story is how hard he worked to get where he is today. In his own words, he was not particularly focused during his formative years.
Here's another thing. This is Vedanta, that's for you. You see, I was born and raised in Mexico. English is my second language. I didn't study very much when I was in Mexico. As a matter of fact, they kicked me out of school because I was kind of a rascal. I never went back to school after 8 years of school.
Despite having a limited education, he came to the United States and became a salesman, selling tires. He started his own business and eventually became an executive in the automobile industry, specializing in tires. He has spoken on Vedanta in the United States, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, Russia, Sweden, and Spain. He is frequently invited to speak at universities, chambers of commerce, high schools, and even prisons. Mr. Waragui posts his satsangs on his YouTube channel, where he also uploads rare videos of Puja Gurudev. Some of these videos include Gurudev conducting question and answer sessions in Mr. Waragui's home. Gurudev is majestically seated in a chair, fielding questions from a group of students, while Mr. Waragui is sitting at the master's feet, smiling and basking in the presence of the Guru. Coming up, we speak to Acharyas Gaurang and Darshana Nanavati. But first, an exciting announcement from Yuva Rhythms. In 2011, Chick West released a CD of hymns under the name Yuva Rhythms. And in 2014, they released a second CD, the soundtrack of the Gurudev musical. And today, here's my good friend Subbu Narayanan to tell us more about Yuva Rhythms.
Yuva Rhythms brings together the musically inclined youth of Chinmaya Mission to play with music, to play with their creativity, and bring ancient chants and mantras and stotras that for various reasons may or may not be as popular, but bring them into more popular culture using more contemporary music, which were all composed by youth, arranged by youth of Chinmaya Mission, and set to music, and also sung and recorded by them, and produced and mastered by them.
So Subbu, one of the most exploited terms in music is fusion. Musicians take a classical Indian song, throw in a drum set and an electric guitar, and all of a sudden it's fusion. How is Yuva Rhythms different?
So when you take ancient songs, we always look at it with the eye of, don't just add a drum set to this. Don't just fuse things for the sake of it. To the extent they need to be kept pure, we keep it pure. To the extent we feel that an instrument, music, or some arrangement or some track adds value.
And I understand you have an exciting announcement to make?
At the Mahasamadhi camp, we are releasing our third album, which is called Gam Gam Ganapati, which has 11 songs on Ganapati, taking ancient stotras and mantras and some songs which we've written ourselves and composed in classical music, both Carnatic and Hindustani, folk music. You'll see elements of jazz and also European music in there. So it's our way of expressing the love for the Lord in terms of Ganapati.
That is so exciting. So Subbu, can we please hear a sneak peek of one of the songs?
Absolutely. One of the songs we've composed is Ajam Nirvikalpam, and we're quite happy about it because almost all of us sang in that particular song, and so I'd love to play you a clip of that.
प्रधानस्वरूपं महत्तत्वरूपं धराचारिरूपं दिगेशादिरूपं असत्सत्स्वरूपं जगद्धेतुरूपं सदा विश्वरूपं गणेशं नतास्मः निर्विकल्पं निराकारमेकं निरानन्दमात्रैकपूर्णं परं निर्गुणं निर्विशेषं निरीहं परब्रह्मरूपं गणेशं भजेम परब्रह्मरूपं गणेशं भजेम परब्रह्मरूपं गणेशं भजेम.
And at this summer's Mahasamadhi camp in Dallas, Pujya Guruji, Swami Tejumainanji, will release the album Gum Gum Ganapati, and the Yuva Rhythms team will sing in a concert at the camp. In the meantime, you can purchase the first 2 Yuva Rhythms CDs at the Chinmaya Publications website. Our next 2 guests are Acharya Gaurangji and Acharya Darshnaji from Houston, Texas. Inspired by Gurudev, the couple attended a 2-year residential Vedanta course at Chinmaya Krishnalaya in 1979. They went back to their professional lives with no intention to teach, but a tragedy had them reconsider.
Darshanti and I moved here for my work, so I got a job here in Houston with the same company that I was working before. And it just so happened that we moved here in July, and in August there was an individual whose father passed away. And he was looking for somebody who can chant Gita and say a few words. And he somehow found out that Darshanti and I had come from the Chinmaya Mission course. So he asked us that if we would go and chant Gita and a few words. So we did. Darshanti chanted the verses and I explained, and they all got so inspired right then and there. They said that, look, we would like you to teach Gita both for children and adults if you can. And this is how Chinmaya Mission Houston, as we know today, began. And the first weekend there were 2 families with 4 children. And that's how it began. And today we have almost 21 acres in southwest Houston. 7 acres is already active with building and everything, with 40,000 square feet of space, including a temple and everything.
Interestingly, Gaurangji and Darshnaji did not seek to recruit mission members.
Really, Darshanti and I did not recruit anybody. Gurudev had taught us, you do the work, and sevaks and help, everything will come. And true to his words, we just, people wanted us to teach, we kept on teaching, and we reached that time when there was no space in our home and our friends' home. So many people were coming. So we rented a place that was then small, and he wanted us to move out. So we just explained to people, and then we ended up buying this 7-acre property with a metal building. And soon we outgrew that metal building, which was 4,500 square feet. So we had to do 2 classes, 2 sessions, and we outgrew that. And that's when Gurudev told us that we should consider building Chinmay Smruti. And when we were planning, he said, no, make it bigger, you will need it. And we started, and again, first session was filled up, then we had to start second session. And then the metal building was also full, so we had to now add Bal Vihar building in 2004. So really there was no effort. We never wanted to grow as such that let us make it grow. It all happened as Gurudev had said. He says, you work and things happen.
So Gaurangji, as a teacher, what is the most important thing to keep in mind?
Working in the world, knowing what a typical individual goes through, and then when you teach it from a first-hand experience rather than theoretical knowledge, you create a greater impression because people see you live the life that they are living, and at the same time they see you that you can live the same life but with a completely different attitude of spirituality.
And did your friends ever ask you, like, what are you doing? Why take up the service and everything? Why don't you just be, quote, normal like everyone else?
Yes. In fact, when we were ready to go to ashram in 1979, and when they found out that we are leaving our job and going there for 2.5 years, some of them were concerned that inflation is very high. What will we do if we don't get a job?
Mm-hmm.
Some even projected that maybe we are not getting along, we have problems in our marriage. And which is right, good friends are concerned about you. But then they understood, and if you are, committed, once they see it, then they realize it, and now the very same people who were concerned, they are very proud of us that we did what we did, and that what we are doing now. When my friends from Seattle come and when they see what we have accomplished through Gurudev, they are proud of us as friends.
And to learn about the creation of the Chinmaya Balvihar curriculum, we spoke to Acharya Darshanaji. Her husband provided us with a solid introduction.
I'll give it to Darshana Auntie, but before that, I just want to give you one anecdote.
Sure.
Last weekend, not yesterday, but week before, the previous weekend, I was in Niagara Falls, Canada. And after my second or third pravachan, there was a bhiksha at a devotee's home. And they said, Gaurang uncle, we know you, but why don't you bring Darshana Auntie here? We use her books, and we just know so much more. And things we don't learn through pravachans, we learn through the book, Darshana Auntie's book. So many places where I go first time to give a talk, even though they invite me, but they all know me as Darshana Auntie's husband, who did the curriculum book, because they're all using it.
See, when I was in PXC one time with Gurudev, he told me to write Balvihar books. I say, me writing Balvihar books? And he rolled and laughed, and I couldn't say no. So then I asked, what? He says, just think and write. And then he says, when I see you next time, I want to have the books in my hand. And he had given me 6 months' time. So when I came back home and I had to do something, I knew nothing about typing, nothing about computer, nothing. So somehow or other I learned everything and prepared something to show him in this 6 months period. So he gave it to Rudit Amir, and she said, now edit it and give it back to her. So she edited and gave back, and it got printed.
While there is a need for Balvihar teachers, many young, potential Yuvakendra-aged teachers are apprehensive because they may not be confident that they are equipped to teach children. What do you say to them?
He had said that, look, if you are going to teach 2 plus 2, 4, do you need to know calculus? So he says, whatever you know, you just start teaching. And then you also start learning further. So he said, when you are teaching the little ones, just start teaching. And then you start learning scriptures by yourself and go to attend classes and all that.
And our final question to Acharya Gaurangji had to do with working together. Whether it's organizing a chick camp, service project, or leading a study group, teamwork is essential to making our endeavors successful. But how do we make sure that we always stay aligned and work together to get the job done?
See, this is more when we are wedded to a vision of Gurudev, that we are here to better ourselves and spread the message of our scriptures through serving our teacher, then even though we differ, and that's going to happen among intelligent people always will have difference of opinion. But we have to set our ego aside at times and yield at times, and at times put our foot down. But we work as a team, and then whatever the team decides, we go forward. And if there are times when in principle we do not agree, then we still support, but we just say that for this particular thing, I won't be able to participate, but I wish you the best, and we don't become a hindrance. That's all I would say, is keep the vision in front of you rather than personalities, because it even happens in Houston and everywhere. We are all human beings, and if we look at our personality and ego, it's very easy that how come what I'm saying is not happening, I'll drop out or resign, but that is not the answer.
Microcosm. Webster's dictionary defines a microcosm as something that is seen as a small version of something much larger. The podcast team had a chance to sit in on a recent Yuva Rhythms rehearsal, and this was truly a microcosm of what Acharya Gaurangji had just laid out. It began with an understanding of the vision. Before the first song was rehearsed, Subbu Narayanan, a Yuva Rhythms composer, explained the vision behind the song.
By the way, for the people who have not heard the song before, a similar song is going to be there in every album, and all of the names for Ganapati in this are Gurudev's names.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're from the 108 names. And so for each of the albums, we're going to pick the names that pertain to that deity. And name.
Nice.
So basically, the sentiment being, I haven't seen Ganapati, I haven't seen Parvati, I haven't seen Krishna, I haven't seen Shiva,
But I've seen
you.
Gurudev.
After understanding the vision, we must strive to fulfill that vision. And when we recognize that we may be off track, we need to stop and reassess. As the rehearsal continued, the musicians brought out the best in each other.
Go a little slowly.
A little bit slower. Maybe a little bit.
Then you can do all of that stuff. It's a little slow.
But at a certain point, they had to stop and reassess.
There needs to be just one up in there.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so here's what we're thinking.
That's all it's missing.
By
So
the way,
Ms. Monty suggested to do a swaram somewhere in this.
Yeah, that's all it's missing.
yeah, and then
In one of the verses, I definitely want to end or put a swaram somewhere such that the swaram finishes and he goes straight into swaram.
And after getting back on track, they didn't just make music, they made magic.
Sing a little louder.
The Gurudev podcast is produced by Chick West and brought to you by Satvik Media. The executive producer is Swami Sarvesh Anand. Ramesh Chirvu is our content manager. I'm your host, Sridhar Kara, and the singers that were featured in this episode were Subbu Narayanan, Sanchit Malhotra, Kritika Rajkumar, and Pallavi Muluk. Vande Chinmaya Sadgurum.